So feel free throughout this presentation at any point, if you have questions, you just put it through the chat so that we can answer them as they come up in between the breaks and during the different speakers. It's meant to be fairly fluent because it's an information type session, you know, with the goal being to get tools that you can work with beyond COVID-19. And I'm going to say it again, but just so that you know, please have a piece of paper and a pencil, because we're going to need that today for one of our exercises. So if you can grab that, that'll be great while we wait. All right, 30 seconds is up. So I'm going to go ahead and start and do some housekeeping, and then hopefully by the time those people come in, we'll be able to kind of get going with our activity today. And so once again, I'll give you a second if you missed that just now to grab a piece of paper and a pencil, because you're gonna require that for part of today's session. Just bear with me for a second. All right, so some housekeeping. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming on a Thursday. That's kind of beautiful. I appreciate you taking the time out today to be here. A few housekeeping things. If you do require sign language, you can pin them at the top of the screen. We have two lovely ASL translators here today, so you can go ahead and do that. This event is the competitive advantage of inclusion, looking at not just now, but COVID-19 and beyond. My name is Abba Watley, and if you don't know me, that's okay. I'm the chair of the Underrepresented group, recovery group, as part of the Kingston Economic Recovery Team, and also I own Shamea Day Spa. And this session is being recorded, so just so everybody is aware, and we also have closed captioning. We have muted everyone just so that we can have a nice flow, but please feel free to ask stuff during the chat, and we'll get to those questions as best as we can. It's located at the bottom of your screen. And if you don't know how to use the chat, you can also use an Alt-H tab and it'll bring it up. I don't know what the equivalent for a Mac is, but hopefully everybody mainly has a PC or the chat function. If you have any questions, I said, we'll try to answer as many as we can, but you know, we have a limited time and trying to keep in mind that everyone has that. And to start off, I like to do a land acknowledgement, and so I'm acknowledging that I am joining from Cataraqui or Kingston, a community on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. I'm honored to live, work, and enjoy the land of these First Peoples whose practices and spiritualities are tied to the land and predate the establishment of the earliest European colonies. To this day, our community reflects the area Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee roots, as well as in our community, there's significant Métis, First Peoples, and other nations across Turtle Island. And so thank you today. So again, I see a few more people have joined us. Before we start, can you grab a pencil and a piece of paper or a pen, whatever you want to write with? You're going to need that. And I also want to give big kudos. This is a huge team event. Like, it was pulled off by Jamie and her team and all the speakers in our group, the underrepresented groups. Woohoo! Hands up, you guys are amazing. And I really also want to give a special shout out to Amber and to Noah for all their hard work and in keeping things together. So thanks very much for that. So I'm going to start things off today with a success story. We have several speakers, and I will just introduce them as they come along. So our first speaker is Leanne O'mara, who is amazing. This is the details behind her. She's a Bachelor of Environmental Studies in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Waterloo. She's worked within the municipal and regional governments before joining the family of Tim Hortons, their business in 1999. And together with her husband, John, they became franchisees with Tim Hortons in 2006 and now operate 6 locations in Kingston. Under their whole umbrella of New Foods, with their parents and their sister Sherry, so it's a family affair, they operate a total of 14 locations and employ about 450 people. In her spare time, she's really passionate about giving back to the community, and she's a longtime volunteer and a current board chair with United Way. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Leanne. Have a great session.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Abba, for that nice introduction. I wanted to start off by saying that we're very proud to be celebrating our 40th anniversary in business in Kingston this year, although I've only been a part of that since '99. Well, I guess I've been a part of it the whole time as a family business, but something we're quite proud of to be celebrating this year. I'm excited to share with you today some things that we've learned along our journey to becoming an employer that embraces equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I would say we've always had a very inclusive environment in our restaurants, but that was more specifically in terms of age, gender, and ability. And it was not until about 7 years ago when we decided to really focus on increasing our cultural diversity in our restaurants. Our goal has always been to be the employer of choice for our labor market in Kingston. So our brand, Tim Hortons, as you know, is considered very Canadian. So we set a goal that we should be very representative of our country, but also of our community, which was becoming more multicultural. Also, we recognize we would be facing a very large labor shortage in the coming years and realized that we would need to add diversity to our toolbox in order to continue to attract and retain the best talent. So initially, early on this journey, we were looking at things such as our application, interviewing, and onboarding processes to make sure that they were not exclusionary. We looked at our policies and procedures, and we worked closely with Keys in order to take advantage of some different programs, and we used them actually to train our teams in intercultural intelligence. If we could advance to the next slide, please. In 2019, we decided to analyze our existing team to see where we were as far as diversity after some years of work. You can see on this slide that after about 5 years of deliberately and actively recruiting, we had approximately 14% of our team who identified themselves in these categories. So just for reference, the numbers along the bottom are our restaurant numbers, and that's how we refer to each location. So you can see that we did have some success. We were showing some diversity in most of our restaurants, but we certainly had some work to do with respect to having a more diverse management and administrative team. So right around that time, actually, we also began to see a huge influx of applications from international students. So we were able to hire from this new pool of applicants, but quickly learned that this group would require some different and unique supports from us. We would need to react quickly to capture, retain, and attract this emerging new sector of our labor market. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that we learned a few things along the way that I wanted to share with you today. A really small support that we didn't have in place that we quickly learned that we needed would be some training on how to deal with our currency. So we're still very much a cash business, and we had new Canadians who were unfamiliar with our currency. So a simple but easy thing to implement for sure. We also learned that our medical benefit program was a huge draw and something that attracted these international students to apply for us. So we needed to ensure that we maintain that as a viable part of our benefit package. Transportation was also a really large issue for many of these students to find their way around our community. So we have since implemented a transit pass program with Kingston Transit, where we offer our team members a Kingston bus pass that is at a reduced rate, and we also take care of purchasing and reloading the bus pass for them right through our payroll deduction. So again, it may seem like another small thing, but it's something that has been a really great tool to help their transition. And finally, we learned the hard way that many international students and graduates who are working on their immigration to Canada actually require to have a supervisory role within 3 months in their workplace. So we lost some really great employees in that time period to other employers who were able to offer them that, and realized that we would need to adjust in order to keep some of these great workers. We've always promoted from within into our management training system, but generally that takes longer than 3 months to get people into those roles. So we had to figure that piece out, and adjust to retain this talent. So we recently introduced our immigration support program, where we work closely with our team members who are working towards their permanent residency. We support them with their paperwork, we transition them into our new updated management training program, and ensure they have mentor and HR support at all times. We've had some other great learnings along the way. One that I'm really excited about is that we have had 0 issues with racial discrimination or conflict within our existing teams around diversity. Our current team members have absolutely and enthusiastically embraced our diversity approach, which is so exciting. Our team members feel that our workplaces are happier and healthier because of it. We also have some proof that there are many financial gains to be had from our increased diversity. For example, turnover is lower and our associated costs such as training have gone down. We have increased operational results and a more engaged team at each of our locations. So basically, this has made good business sense to me. And finally, for my next slide, I'll share a little bit about where we are now. Our current team is made up of about 22% of international students and graduates. I think that's a pretty exciting number. Last year, in the calendar year, we hired 71 international students, which works out to be about actually 29% of all hires for last year. We lost 29 of those people for other jobs or who left Kingston, but 12 of them are now in our management training system and advancing their careers with us. We also are proud to be one of the first employers in Kingston to sign the Workplace Inclusion Charter. So that's just some of the fruits of our labor, and I know she's listening today, so I would be remiss to not celebrate Andrea Payne, our Human Resources Manager, who's a big part of the vision that got us to where we are today. So thank you to Andrea and her team. My last slide is just a snapshot of some of our happy, engaged team members, and I just wanted to close by recommending anyone who is looking at or considering increasing their cultural diversity to just go for it. It may seem daunting and you may not know where to start, but there is so many benefits and so many supports in our community to help get you started. I'd be happy to share any of those with anyone if you have any questions, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Leanne. That was a great, lots of little claps there in the chat. A great start off to the session. I think, just setting the pace for why this is so. And so with that in mind, we want to ask you, everyone who are attending, to kind of answer this poll so we can look and see what it is and where you are at in this stage and what help you may need. So the poll question that will pop up on your screen shortly will ask, what are key components that should be included in an inclusive hiring strategy? So if everyone can just choose something and then press submit, and then we'll have a little question and answer on that, as well as any other questions you may have on Leanne. So again, if you can just go to the poll that popped up, what are the key components that should be included in an inclusive hiring strategy that you think from your purview?
I'm just going to read the options out loud if I can. Option 1 is communication from senior leadership. Option 2, training for hiring managers. Option 3, recruitment targets. Option 4, strategic employee engagement, like ERGs. And option 5, I am not sure, and that is why I'm attending today.
All right, so we'll give you a few minutes to answer that. There's no wrong answer. All right, hopefully everyone has voted. We'll see the results here soon. Drum roll. All right, okay. So I believe everyone can see it. The question was, what are the key components that should be included in an inclusive hiring strategy? 29% of people said communication from senior leadership. 35% said training for hiring managers, 4% said recruitment targets, 13% said strategic employee engagement like ERGs, and 19% I'm not sure, and that's why I attended today. All right, great. So does anyone have any particular questions? And maybe we can ask Leanne, or we can start a discussion about, your answers to that poll. You can either put your hand up physically and I can see it, or you can put your hand up in the chat, like on your screen, and I can go to that as well. Or you can just put a question in the chat. Okay, so either we're doing a phenomenal job. No questions? Leanne, what do you say if I were to ask you, would have been, you said it was a big task and it may seem daunting, but what was your first step? What would be advice as to the first step as to what someone should do if they're looking to do a strategy like this?
I think we just started at the beginning, like I said, with some of our policies and our hiring practices. We needed to make sure that we weren't being exclusionary by way of language in our ads or where we were looking. We just sort of needed to broaden our web, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
Pavna has her hand up.
Okay, Pavna.
Hi, Leanne. That was great. Got lots of great tips on things that we need to accommodate and implement. One of my questions was, you mentioned there was no 100% acceptance from within your organization. Did any of your hires who are from other backgrounds face anything from the public?
We have actually had more of that to deal with than we have from our team, actually. So, as you know, we're a very customer-facing business, and we have had customer complaints about people not being able to understand our team members and things like that, but nothing major, no major harassment or anything like that.
Right. And your comment about currency really resonates, because my first job that only lasted a couple of weeks because I couldn't stand it was in a store, and I had to deal with currency, and I was shortchanged every single day. So it's great that you provide that training. This was many years ago, but thank you.
Thanks, Pavna. That's a great point, because I think you take it for granted, just growing up in a country that this is the currency, but that there's a learning curve that has to be reached first. And so, Terry Ann, I saw that you had your hand up. I'm sorry, Terry Lynn.
Thanks, but that's fine. I reply to Terry Lynn, whatever you offer. Yeah, thank you, Leanne, for covering that. And I felt it's funny. I guess maybe I'm a little more critical because of the work that I do. But the one question that I always put to senior management is, and even before you start to look at revisions of your policy and doing it kind of in parallel with your policy, what supports did you put into play for mental health for your new hires? Because I've found through a lot of the work that I do, retention is it's difficult, one, to train or to provide supports to have folks be able to do the job in a good way. But what health supports are you providing? Because often a lot of racialized, marginalized folks, we don't speak aloud. We just put up with it until we get to the point where we break and then quit. So just curious if you could expand a little bit more on that.
Mental health is something that we face in our business quite a lot, regardless of if we're talking about underrepresented groups. So we have had some supports in place for many years. We offer an employee assistance program that is confidential, support, and it's free to access for our employees and their families. We do have a mentoring in place, so new team members are mentoring with an employee that has been around for a long time. They are together with the trainer, so we have one-on-one training for at least a week for our team members, so they get to develop a close relationship with that person as well. Is that the type of answer you were looking for?
I suppose, you know, and I guess, again, in reference to the trainers and the mentors, are these individuals who identify as well as part of, you know, part of a racialized sector identity?
Sometimes they are.
Okay.
It just worked out that way, but also I'll point out our employee assistance plan is offered in many languages. So that's something that, you know, is accessible to all regardless of their background.
Okay, thank you. I saw Tim and I saw Wissam, so we'll go to Tim first. And these will be our last two for this round, and then we'll continue throughout. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, just quickly for Leanne, you mentioned and the issue with customers not understanding and language barriers in the hospitality industry can be an issue just because coworkers have to communicate with customers. How are you overcoming those challenges?
It's really on a case-by-case basis, but you know, it's very easy for us to say we are inclusive, but we can't make the rest of our customers as inclusive as we'd like them to be right away. So it's just how we manage it from case by case in the restaurant. One thing that I think is really unique in our industry is we have signs up saying that we will back our employees, and our employees are have the right to, you know, to be treated fairly in our restaurants. So I have and will continue to, you know, ask customers to leave if they're being disrespectful to our employees. So I very much side with my team members, more so than people might think. You know, the old adage of the customer is always right is not always true. It might not be a popular opinion, but it's one that I have to stand behind my employees for sure.
Thanks, Leanne. And Wissam, we'll round it off with your question for this part.
Thanks, Ava. I think actually that it's the similar question to Tim's one. So thank you so much for the question. And it seems that you are taking very, you know, positive steps towards inclusion. So thank you so much for sharing some of your best practices. I would just add to the question because, you know, I'm serving many of them, like the people who are having the language barrier when they come to Canada. And, you know, I really appreciate that you're taking the side of your employees and trying to kind of, you know, adapt a new concept other than the customer is always right. So that's really great. But one of the things that I would like maybe to tell you about that at Keys and through the charter and through different programs as well, there are kind of support to different employers with that specific issue. And I'm just bringing that up because I know that many employers sometimes they feel hesitant to hire people, you know, who are not fluent in English because they are trying to avoid those situations. So there are lots of programs at Keys and through the charter that are very geared towards helping, you know, people who are having the English as second language with their workplaces terminologies. So it's like an ESL course that's given to people specifically to like sector specific. And the hospitality sector is one of the major sectors that has been covered through the last 2 years. So this is something also that it's a resource that you can tap on through the charter project, and we can definitely help with that. And, you know, any employer that might feel that this is a point of hesitation when they hire newcomers or when they hire people of, you know, the English is their second language, we can definitely help with those kind of ESL courses that would help that specific sector in their workplace language.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so thanks, Leanne. We're gonna move on over to Jamie. Jamie Britton is the co-owner and the VP of Dolphin Digital Technologies, currently seconded to CCRW as their Chief Business Development Officer. Jamie and her husband also own and operate Summerland Rideau, a family campground located on Leo Lake Road in Kingston. Jamie is a business leader for employment of people with disabilities. Her focus is to develop business solutions which ensure the future of work includes diversity and inclusion as part of an employment plan for an enhanced workforce. Jamie's going to speak to us today about the business impact opportunity and methodology. All right.
Thanks so much, Abba. I really appreciate it. I just want to start by describing that I'm a mature white woman wearing a white blouse and light green jacket. My hair is shoulder length and colored blonde, though I'll be honest enough to say that the roots have started to take on their very own gray color of late. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses, which features Indigenous artwork. And it's a privilege to be able to speak with you today and to see how many people registered to participate. It certainly tells me that this is a compelling topic of interest, and also part of how we look at developing strategies to thrive and survive in the midst of COVID. And so for me, inclusion, diversity, and everything that goes with it, the tactics involved and understanding how the how-tos, it couldn't be better explained than by Leanne's story. It's a perfect example how business just tried something and they're still figuring it out, but along the way they've recognized that there's pieces of success, elements of individual connection to a successful story. And that really is what makes a difference most for our businesses and community, certainly in these challenging times. You know, it's widely accepted that diversity of thought and experience is required to achieve better results. But I actually believe that diversity and inclusion can positively impact every line of business. There's an advantage to knowing our differences. It can help solve talent gaps and even drive business essentials. Diverse talent represents a critical component in the workforce right now, but exponentially for the future of work. So it's imperative and very beneficial that we are able to identify the attributes, maybe attributes like initiative, advanced communication, information processing, creativity, critical thinking, decision-making, all the talents that can be transferred across positions. Inclusion results in exposure to variables of perspective and situational learning, and these all can facilitate mutual problem solving, innovation, and even healthier work environments. Diversity is a representation of all in our community, but inclusion is more. It's about building trust and establishing a real sense of belonging. We're here today to learn from each other. We're here to learn from those who have practiced already, included tactics in their workplaces, and have stories to tell. Either we're simply curious just to see what others are doing, or we've tried, and we're not sure how it's going, or if we've been very successful, or what to do next. But your learning is personal. You want to connect it to your business, and you need to be able to focus on how do you measure success. There's 3 simple steps that I would encourage you to consider. 1, start from the top. The most impactful workplace initiatives start at the top because leadership is fundamental to success. Know your reason why you are doing it. Why are you focusing on accessing other avenues of talent? Likely because you need to. Why are you focused on ensuring that your employees are engaged and feel that sense of belonging? Well, right now, because of COVID, it means we are all less likely to feel connected. So work on instilling confidence. Have a genuine plan and demonstrate it, and be public about your goals. Don't compare yourself or your business with others. Own what you vision. The City of Kingston has done an excellent job of claiming their vision for inclusion by establishing the Workplace Inclusion Charter and demonstrating their goals quite publicly. And thirdly, encourage peer-to-peer interactions. Just like today, it doesn't have to be just your employees. It can be business-to-business connections, sharing stories about what's working, what's challenging, and what can we help each other with. Help foster that sense of belonging that translates from the workplace to your role in community. Facilitate learning from each other and recognize the value of everyone having input, because there are real advantages to inclusion. It helps to increase your market share. It does improve employee engagement. It enhances business and community reputation. It does increase productivity and innovation, which improves customer satisfaction. And yes, it does increase profit. Harvard Business Review found that inclusive companies report a 90% higher revenue. Some of these advantages are exactly what we're focused on in the midst of COVID. If we can develop strategies which achieve comprehensive results, our actions will normalize and become what we do by nature. I have the pleasure of being the Chief Business Development Officer for CCRW right now, and we really do encourage leadership by building diversity and disability confidence. We also instruct in strategic inclusive hiring methodologies because we understand the importance of building a resilient workforce that can change with the changing business models. We encourage business leaders to influence others by demonstrating their practices, by sharing their success stories, exactly as Leanne has done for us today. We've composed some COVID resources we're happy to share with you, which has some tactile pieces, information, and even financial resources. And we've also launched our program called AIM, Accommodation and Inclusion Management, because we do understand how difficult it is to meet the needs of all employees in a time of transition, of fluidity, of adapting, and making sure that everyone has what they need to succeed. So if it's ergonomics, if it's noise canceling headphones, if it's not even knowing what's needed so that they can do their job to the best of their ability, please feel free to contact us. We can help you with that. Talented people should not be overlooked and undervalued because talented people are essential for our business. COVID has demonstrated that we can improvise. There are many ways to do work that has nothing to do with how it's always been done. If we have an openness to be inclusive, then I suggest we can work together and figure it out.
Oh, awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. My summary from that: start from the top, know your why. I think that's like key in anything in life. What's the why? Why are you doing it? 2, own it. Be public with it. Share it. And 3, have tete-a-tetes. Communicate with each other. Share resources with your team, with other people. Learn from them, just as you would if you're trying to do anything else. And so I guess the fundamentals are the same for any process, and just apply it to this, is my takeaway. And so I'll throw it out to the floor for any discussions or questions for Jamie. See any hands? Sorry, I have a couple of screens open, so you have to bear with me, or you can put something in the chat. Again, I feel like we're doing such a good job. Don't be shy, it's all right. All right. Jamie, can you give us like another takeaway example of, that it is so simple, I think sometimes the hard work is just getting over that hurdle in our mind or our trepidation. So any other words that could just, incite people to take up the mantle and to do this?
Sure. It's interesting the questions that I've been asked over the years. So a little bit more about what we've done. Dolphin was the first business in Canada to develop a barrier-free hiring strategy for people with disabilities. And when we started, that would have been about 2008. There were no answers. So our decision was just to try. And I think I would stand firmly on that position today, especially hearing what Leanne said as well, and many other businesses across Canada and around the world that I've worked with. There are no right or wrong answers when you want to do something. You have to be able to be willing to just try. And I think that's always my pushback when someone points out that something isn't quite right, or we said something wrong, or we did a misstep. And we all know that one of the things that stops us from trying is fear. Fear of having an effect that we didn't want, that wasn't intended, but that occurred anyway. And so I would ask that's considered. When you notice something, don't come at someone from a point of attack. Come at someone with, I recognize you're trying. Here's something that might help you do that. So it's really important for business to recognize this is not about a one-stop shop, that solution that works for everyone the same. It doesn't. In my experience, in fact, that's the opposite. This is about an individualized approach that resonates with your business, your organization, and how you do things, but that has meaningful attachment. And so the only way to genuinely figure it out is to do this kind of event where you get to hear from others, but also just that first step. Try, just do something.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. All right, are there any questions for Jamie? Not seeing any in the chat. Sorry, just double checking. And I'm not seeing any hands up. All right, well, thanks, Jamie. So this is the part with your pencil and paper. Get ready. We're going to make you do something. So there's no hiding away here now. And so before I introduce Sunita, well, I'm going to introduce Sunita first. So Sunita has been an active member in the Kingston community for the past 23 years. She was born in Kenya to parents of Indian origin, and she has lived across 4 continents by the age of 18. Lived experience, exposure to various cultures and backgrounds have continually influenced her views on equity and inclusion throughout her personal and professional life. Sunita has served in the Kingston community in varying capacities as a volunteer in several committees and boards. She's the past president of the India-Canada Association, past board director for the Tech Centre, and currently is a board of director member for the Greater Kingston Chamber of Commerce. She has been with the Kingston Immigration Partnership for 6 years. So Sunita is going to take it over in a second, but she's going to take us through an exercise today to talk about our biases called the Trusted 10. And we will be, at some point when she's finished, broken into breakout rooms. So everyone will get a link that will come up that will direct you to a breakout room. And in that room, there will be either Leanne, Sunita, Jamie, or myself, and then we will go through the exercise. And then after we do that, we'll come back into this main room to have a discussion about what we did. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sunita.
Thank you, Abba, and thank you, Jamie, Leanne, for making some powerful cases towards equity, diversity, and inclusion. So they say a bias recognized is a bias sterilized. And that is why the topic of bias is relevant in today's presentation. A bias is a rigid positive or negative belief that can be conscious or unconscious. Just like any conscious thinking, conscious bias is deliberate. It is guided by logic and rationale. It is explicit. Could we have the first slide, please? Oh, okay, the one after that. Thank you. So unconscious or implicit bias, on the other hand, is similar to our brain being on autopilot. It is rooted in our cultural environment. As a result of unconscious biases, certain people benefit and other people are penalized. Although we all have biases, many unconscious biases tend to be exhibited towards minority groups based on factors such as class, gender, sexual orientation, race, disability, etc. Let's look at the scenario in the next slide. A father and his son are involved in a horrific car crash, and the man died at the scene. But when the child arrived at the hospital and was rushed into the operating room, the surgeon pulled away and said, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." Why are we so puzzled? Did we make the connection that the surgeon is the child's mother? Raise your hand if you did. I see some hands up. That's great. But it is 2021, and our brain is hardwired such that we do not immediately make the connection that the surgeon is the mother. Had this scenario been about picking the child up from school, we would have easily related the mother to that role. The next slide will show you how different types of biases can manifest. We have affinity bias, for instance. This is what we would have towards someone we can relate to, someone who we assume has a similar value system as ours. It could be a fellow alumni. Then there's confirmation bias. We've been exposed to the idea that all Asians are good at math. We now have in front of us 2 identical interview scores for a bookkeeping job. Based on our confirmation bias, we choose the Asian candidate over the non-Asian. Then there's attribution bias. This is where we are generous to credit ourselves with our accomplishments and seek more grace for our failures. Contrarily, we are less willing to recognize another person's accomplishments and might be inclined to view their success as a stroke of luck. At the same time, we might judge their shortcomings more harshly. Then there is conformity bias, where our beliefs are swayed easily by others. For example, as a panelist in an interview setting, we may lean towards the popular belief of the group by withholding a contradicting opinion that we may have had about the candidate. Another one to be mindful of is the halo effect, not mentioned here on the slide. We are prone to assume that the person with the highest education or the most money or the most power is always right. In the next slide, we'll see a cultural iceberg. And our first impression of a person is akin to our reflection in the mirror. For instance, I see that I'm a brown woman, dark-haired, short, with glasses, reasonably well-dressed, depends on the time of the day. All of these are traits that can be placed above the waterline or at the tip of the iceberg. As Abba introduced me, she knew a lot more about it. And from that, what she knew about me, because we got to know each other, she extended this opportunity. Perhaps if she didn't know that I was so passionate about equity, diversity, and inclusion, I would not have been extended the opportunity to be able to present in front of you all today. So these are things to keep in mind, and we see that our biases sometimes can benefit some people, as I mentioned earlier, and other times we leave some people behind. I guess at this point we will move into the breakout session, and that will be moderated, as Abba already mentioned, by Abba, Leanne, Jamie, and yours truly, and then we'll reconvene after the breakout session. Thank you.
All right, so
Okay, I think that we've all been divided up into groups. I was just kind of, it was like
from the interpreter.
Yes, Carrie?
Leah, a participant, would like to join a breakout group. She needs the interpreters to go into the same breakout group.
So this is the breakout group that Leah's in with you for that purpose. Yes. Yes.
Oh, so this is already a group. Got
Yes,
it. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Yes. So the exercise is to think of 10 people that you trust and write down their names. So 10 people that are not family, not your spouses, not your children, but other than that, there are new rules. Just 10 people that are those you trust. And I'll give you a moment to do that. You should all have your paper and pen or your screen and keyboard that was requested. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. Let me know if you have any questions. So again, it's just 10 people that you trust, but not your spouse or your family, direct family members. And all of you are welcome to unmute yourselves if you want. This is meant to be an interactive, not a session where it's just me talking. I'll give you just a little bit more time.
I don't think you're muted, Carrie.
How are we doing? Okay, can you now code them on gender and age, race, sexual orientation, education, spirituality, and marital status, if you know? So I'll say that again: gender, age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, education, oh, sorry, I missed one, disability, spirituality, and marital status. So you have your 10 names, and now you are looking to just, it's this, nobody else is going to see this. So sorry about that. I should have said that from the start. No one else is going to see this. This is an exercise that you alone will see, but we're going to talk about some of the things that we identify. So I'll just say the categories one more time: gender, age, race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, education, disability, spirituality, and marital status. I'll just give you just another brief moment to finish that up. Okay, so as I said, anyone can participate. This is about conversation between you all, but I'll throw a question out there that you can start with. Are you surprised by your list of trusted 10 people?
From Leah, no surprise.
No surprise? Anyone surprised? No one's surprised by their list and what they see in front of them. I don't know if anyone wants to speak up. I will be honest with you. I was a little surprised at mine for two reasons. One, initially, I couldn't think of 10 people that I trusted to say that they would be somebody that I would put down on a list outside of my family. So I found that interesting. And the second aspect of why I was surprised that it was mainly women. And I don't know why that surprised me. So anyone else, now that they've heard Terry Lynn and I be straightforward, want to share what their findings were?
I actually was surprised too that all mine are women when you said that. And I have 7 people down. So I was surprised at that as well.
Thanks very much, Mary Helen. Anyone else? What about the question why? Sorry, go ahead. Sure, Carrie.
Leah speaking.
Leah, thank you.
I think that I'm sort of half and half in terms of diversity. In, deaf, disabilities. So the diversity occurred about 50-50.
Okay, thank you, Leah. What about anyone? Did you notice anything in particular about education or religion? I don't want to call on anyone, but I certainly want everyone to feel like they can participate here. Anyone have an interesting finding that they were not anticipating on the list of people, and how it is representative of, let's say, your work engagement or your community engagement? Is it similar? I'm just looking to see if I can't see raised hands or anything. So again, take yourself off mute. If you're trying to say something, know that that might be a first step, just so that we can hear you. Okay, so the last question that I'll ask you then, when you look at this trusted 10 list, or 7 or 6 or wherever you got to, is there anything here that is problematic? Is there anything here that makes you uncomfortable because you recognize it is different than what you might have thought. The notion of this exercise was to have a focus on our unconscious bias. And so therefore, there are assumptions being made about how you would compose your list. I made some of them about myself before I even started the exercise. So does anyone have any comments or identified something that is relevant to them in the general conversation of inclusion and how you look and think about the people that are around you? What about from the aspects of how you might hire? Anyone willing to talk to that aspect of recognizing how you see those around you or interact with people around you or make assumptions about people around you? I think I see someone with a designation that may do some hiring, or at least certainly put into place practicing hiring methodologies. Not sure if you want to jump in and have anything to say there on unconscious bias. We're just looking to share thoughts with each other so that we can learn from each other. No one's willing to say, okay, that's no problem at all. I think what's important, oh, hold on, sorry, Leah has something to say. Thank you, Leah.
In my experience as a deaf person, I see bias and misconceptions occurring all of the time. A deaf person, oh, you couldn't do this. Absolutely not. You need to be able to hear to be able to do this. And so there, or, oh, we can't provide access for you. You don't match our vision or our understanding of what we want in a worker.
Leah, how would you respond to someone making you feel that way or saying that to you? How have you responded if you have? Sorry, that was directly for Leah, just in response to what she shared there.
There are several solutions. You provide options. There's interpreting services, there's texting, there's infographics. So there are a variety of ways to break down any barriers around communication and to get away from an autist approach and focusing on that ability to hear. And so, you know, I guess in essence, what we're having to do is teach businesses.
Thank you very much. You're hired. You're so right. I think that you make a very, very good point, and I'd love to hear anyone else's, sort of insight here or experience of this nature. But I just jotted down quickly what you said, and those would be tools that I would definitely mention to another business that I'm working with on how to help them figure out different means of communication, not just if someone is deaf or hard of hearing, but also in the instance where communication is difficult, a noisy room where, wait a second, I can't hear. So closed captioning for me is about me knowing what's going on, even if I can't hear it. I love it. I use it in almost every presentation that we do internally. There's always that option. Secondly, we make assumptions. How about asking a person? How about just simply asking, how can I help? Or what do you need to be able to share that with us? I would suggest that's probably the most direct way. The challenge with unconscious bias is that we do make assumptions. And so in order to not to do so, it's best to ask. In fact, I can't think of any situation where that's not the first step with anyone. It's part of dignified behavior, it's part of respect of person, and it certainly demonstrates your willingness to be able to work with someone. Is there anyone else that would like to add to that? Sure, go ahead, Terry Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. And I was certainly going to go exactly where you just went, in the sense that a lot of folks, and not just in the employment situation, but family, so on and so forth, it's not about having that individual fit into your box all the time. It's about understanding that maybe your box could use with a little, meshing of the corners, because not every box is perfect. And so it really is about reciprocity and understanding and growing together, learning together, because then you're going to get the best out of your employee or your friend or your family member, and also grow yourself. We're not all, at the master point of knowing it all, and experiential learning is only what we have in our own capacity to do. And it's really about change, taking chances or taking risks. And I mean, a lot of people are afraid of change, but the reality is if you don't adapt, you die, quoting Darwin. So yeah, thank you.
I would suggest he would have fun with all of us on that adapting piece in the midst of COVID, let me tell you. I think that's a really good point, Terry Lynn, and thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else that just wants to add their personal perspective or experience that they've had? Some of the challenge that you faced hiring or looking for talent or even managing employee engagement. I think that those are all part of the greater conversation today, and certainly an opportunity is in front of us to share. So anyone that has thoughts or input would be great. I'm not seeing anyone again. Okay, so let me put something else out there, since we have Leah, whose personal experience she has so kindly shared, and some really good solutions. What about a solution? What is something that you've used or you've seen or you've experienced or you've heard someone share that they've experienced that was a solution that would be able to be implemented by yourself, or that you would encourage someone else to try? We heard Leanne talk about a number of things at Tim Hortons that they had implemented, and they didn't recognize, some of the education pieces that they were going to have until they tried and saw that that was necessary. But what other things have you seen that could be of value to someone else? Anything at all. Doesn't have to be your direct employment or personal experience. It can be anything that you've seen in community.
If I could share my experience and some experience of others that I've seen in the deaf community, we've got finally captions on YouTube that are available for all, but to demonstrate more access to others. In terms of other solutions, I really try to think universally, not just for a single individual, but to approach it with a universal thinking of the diversity for everyone. And, and also that if we were all the same, that's very boring. Diversity exists, and to take advantage of that and the opportunities to develop and go from there.
Thank you, Leah. I believe I had that comment in what I shared, and I appreciate you echoing that. It's so true. It's absolutely so true as to what we recognize. So again, to look back at the list of the trusted 10, the list of 10 people or however many were on your list, what is something that you've learned from them that can be universally applied? And if there's nothing that falls outside of your own personal experience and knowledge, you might want to think on that for a moment. Because the beauty of having unique individual human beings is that we learn from each other and we experience things different with each other. So that's something to keep in mind as you go about thinking about the topic of inclusion. It's not a practice that has parameters that are specific and that's it. It's a fluid place. It's where you learn and develop. And that's why I said to keep it very personalized. Your learning must be personalized or it won't be genuine. And it's about embracing those who are willing to share their experiences and understanding. And I like the word universally, Leah. Thank you for that. Thank God we're not all the same. Some have humor, some have moments of beauty when they sing. I do not. Others have intelligence that I simply hope to access sometimes. I mean, that is how diversity makes a better equation. It's by accessing the elements of individuals that add something that wouldn't be there if they were not part of it. And it's also how you create genuine engagement by allowing individuals to feel that they can contribute, that they are acknowledged, that they are asked for opinion, that they are genuinely engaged in the thought process. I like to look at it as the journey of information technology. At one time it was away somewhere in a closet and you only called on IT when you had a problem and that was it. It is now intrinsically embedded in every single thing that we do and every decision that we make. I would suggest that inclusion, accessibility, universality of design is exactly like that. It's something to be included in every aspect of our lives. It's something that needs to be at the decision-making table in business all of the time. That's how you make premium products and solutions. But it's also how we ensure that we're ready to encourage everyone within our community to achieve a skilled job that they're looking for, and how we're going to be able to meet the needs of business. One of the biggest challenges with any business or organization is finding talent. I've yet to hear anyone disagree with me. Some industries and sectors are more difficult, others not so much. But it's important that we learn from each other, because there is no one single solution. I'm not sure, I feel like you guys are hearing me way too much, so I'd love to hear from someone else with an opinion on either the Trusted 10 or even just the general topic of today, the advantage of inclusion. And again, I don't want to call on anyone directly, but I would love to encourage you to do so. I'm seeing no hands raised, and I understand we're on a countdown to go back into the general room, when we will just describe this exercise a little bit and finish up with just some shared resources on how we might all be part of helping each other and learning from each other. I would personally like to thank you all for attending today. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to meet other people in the community, but also to have a better understanding of what it means to be included, and conversely, how it feels to be excluded. And I think we didn't touch on that today, so maybe that's a next topic that Leah and more of our community members can share in. So thank you very much, and I think they'll be taking us back into the main room right now. Please stay with us for just a few more minutes so that you get access to those resources and hear what other people in the other rooms were talking about as well. I think it'd be good for all of us.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. Maybe we'll have a little discussion. How was it? What did you think? You can just put your hand up, unmute yourself and go. Or maybe I can go to the Leanne and Jamie and Sunita. What was kind of the thoughts that came out of your rooms? Jamie, you can go first. Oh.
Sorry, no, I was just trying to find my button to unmute. We had a quiet room, but we did have some good input. So there was some surprise at the Trusted 10. There certainly was some good input, specifically from a personal perspective and other observations in the community, where there was the identified component of ensuring that things are universally designed so that more people can participate and appreciate that. And some suggestions on communication, specific forms of communications, so that you're not making assumptions about how someone would be able to participate or hear what's going on or know and understand what other people are saying. And those suggestions were fantastic. The ASL interpreters, for instance, that we have today, having, even texting, a simple thing like an infograph, excellent ways to just demonstrate that thinking differently and outside the box sometimes, there's easy answers to be had. We just have to ask people how they need to be incorporated into the conversation, so to speak.
Right. Thanks, Jamie. What was your feedback, Leanne? How did your Trusted 10 go?
We had a lot of great discussion in our room. A lot of it centered on how people were surprised to find their list was made up of people predominantly like them. So we had discussion around how you tend to surround yourself with people that are like you, and then we talked about how you may how we may now go out of our way to include people in that circle who are not like ourselves. We also talked about social media and how people present, how they may be presenting themselves on social media may be very different than how they are face-to-face. So I think that about rounds up our discussion.
Perfect. Thanks, Anita.
Yes, same here. Like it was a really, ours was a rich discussion. We had a vocal group, and I think everyone recognized that there was an element of surprise as to what the list looked like, as we've heard from other people. And the next question was that, why are the results the way they are? And again, from lack of exposure, if I was to just sum it up, and what are our interests, they tend to be common, and we continue to gravitate towards people that we know always. But if we can go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to address while I'm talking, speaking to the last question, how is it problematic? So, 1 second. So this is, this shows you through this model, through this quick depiction here, that we have, there are several people that we know, that we are familiar with, and then there are, that's the outer circle, that's the majority of the people that we know, and then happens, like the circle shrinks a little bit, and we call this the comfy zone. This is like, you're okay to have them over, come over to my front yard, and this is a smaller group. And then finally, there are the people that we trust, and these are the people that we assign to those relational tasks. And this can be problematic in a workplace setting, because if we continue to go towards the same people and entrust them with special projects and special assignments, then yes, that benefits a certain group of people, but we are leaving someone behind. That is a missed opportunity. And that was discussed quite a bit in our group as well, is that we are leaving someone behind. We're missing out on the diversity in ideology, in ways, how we do things in our practices. And as we've already heard from Leanne and Jamie, there is so much benefit to that, and we are missing out on that. And another point that Wassam made was really interesting, was that the lessons that we have learned from having the refugee community amongst us as newcomers, because while we are in this pandemic, and they've been through so much more with coming from war zones and refugee camps, and how they reacted or responded to the current crisis that we are in, as opposed to those of us who have been perhaps used to living a certain way, let's put it this way, and we haven't had a crisis of that magnitude that we've had to encounter or face. So I think with that we can conclude the trusted 10 exercise, unless there's more questions to be.
Well, I think in the essence of time we'll go through, but I would say I'll just add that our group, we, it was interesting. Some people were not even able to get to the 10. And so we spoke and we kind of centered our chat about like, what does trust mean, and how they had different interpretations for different people. And we also spoke to the fact that sometimes it's circumstantial, that someone you may trust with your child may be different, someone you trust with a project or a thing. And so maybe that may influence your decision. So just adding to what you said. And so with that, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to introduce Wissam. Wissam Ayad is the Workplace Inclusion Charter Coordinator at Keys Job Center. She immigrated as a professional trilingual business analyst to Canada 9 years ago. Struggling as a racialized person herself, she decided to use and strengthen her education, work, and life experience to support underrepresented communities in Canada and in Kingston specifically. Through her work at Keys Job Center, Wissam has coached and supported many underrepresented individuals for many years and successfully introduced creative methods to help them achieve their objectives and contribute successfully to their communities. Examples of her achievements are the creation of the Begin Again Group Co-op for refugee women, and the highest achieved employment rate in the province for an IRCC employment program known as Destination Employment. So I'm going to turn it over to Wissam to speak briefly about the Workplace Charter.
Thanks so much, Eva, and thank you all for having me today. I'm so glad that I got the chance actually to meet with all of you and learn about the many best practices within different workplaces and, you know, your enthusiasm about being more inclusive and diverse. So that's really amazing. So having that said, I would like to mention that, you know, we are having, many of you actually have been already on board for the Workplace Inclusion Charter at Keys Job Center, which is a partnership between the city of Kingston, Keys, and St. Lawrence College. So I'm going to talk maybe a little bit more about the updates of the charter in its new phase. So the new phase is an expansion of the pilot phase, and the pilot phase, very briefly, was kind of focused on supporting workplaces in Kingston to be more inclusive and diverse, specifically towards newcomers. However, with that expansion, we are trying to support multiple equity-seeking groups. So we are hoping always to support, you know, 3 marginalized groups, racialized people, including newcomers, but not limited to newcomers, indigenous people, and people with disabilities, and also putting a lens of intersectionality between all of those groups and other groups as well. So having that said, we have redeveloped many of the resources that has been in the pilot phase to fit with the new population that we are trying to serve. So we have
Can you slow down just a little bit for the translator so they can keep up?
Thank you so much, Eva, for letting me know. I know I'm very fast talker. Sorry about that. Okay, so yes, bear with me. That's hard to do, but I will try my best. So yeah, so we have actually developed many resources that would fit with the population that we are trying to serve this time. So we have redone our assessment that basically we are trying to assess the level of inclusion and the level of diversity within organization through different 4 layers of employment. So policies and procedures, recruitment, retention and career development, and organization culture. And we have developed a very comprehensive toolkit. And the competitive advantage of that toolkit that it's much more action oriented than training. Of course, the training is important, and we are trying to deliver some trainings as well, but we always pair the training with more action-oriented tool. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we are achieving tangible outcomes with the employers that we are supporting. The second competitive advantage is all the data that has been incorporated into the development of the resources were retrieved not only from the expertise of the team, but basically from the inclusion coaches who are representatives of those underrepresented groups. So we have incorporated all the exclusion experiences and the life experiences of those individuals into determining the tools that would support employers in becoming more inclusive and diverse. So it's coming from within. So it's really important to have the voices of those people heard. And not only heard, but actually they are also helping in the implementation of the tools. So when an employer would sign onto the charter, when they do the implementation of their action plan, 2 inclusion coaches from different underrepresented groups will be helping the inclusion advisor to implement the action plan and dealing very closely with the employer. So they would gain and benefit from their insights, from their inputs, from what they feel towards the outcomes that, you know, the employer is achieving. So I think that this is one of the competitive advantages as well of the charter, that you are having not only the resources that we have built, but also the access to those groups in a learning environment, in collaboration environment. If you are, you know, if you want to learn more, because I want to be cautious with the time and mindful. So if you want to know more about the different tools, you know, from inclusive hiring practices that, you know, Leanne today has talked about, or even more, please give me a call. My email is in the chat box, and Eva has my email address as well. So feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help with your tailored needs. Thanks.
Thanks, Wissam. As a fellow fast talker, I understand. I appreciate that. After this, we have everybody's list because you had to register through Eventbrite. So we will send a package so that you can see some of the information afterwards, so that you can have those resources. I'm just going to turn it back to Sunita, who's going to talk about some other examples of how companies have introduced EDI practices in their workplaces. So I'm going to turn it to you, Sunita. Oh, your volume, Sunita. Sorry, can't.
Sorry.
Yeah, some of this was just thrown in, and I think we've already looked at what an inclusive leader looks like, and we don't really need to spend too much time, but we see that, having that desire to unlearn old behaviors, learn new behaviors, be culturally intelligent or culturally humble, and wanting to collaborate, which is what we're doing here today. So this was just a slide that I threw in there, and we've kind of touched on that through Jamie and Leanne's presentation. We can perhaps move on to the next one. So, coming back to that, like strategies that we can apply to mitigate unconscious bias, like what does our recruiting look like? What does our promotional material look like? What are we being, what's the language we are using? Is our language inclusive? Does our promotional material promote the demographic that we are serving, right? And what is the, how do we manage performance and advancement or talent review? Perhaps going out for a steak and a beer isn't for everyone, right? We need to take the time to find out what works for different demographics and how can we be inclusive in that approach. And so there is a lot of information here, and if we can just flip to the next slide. I'm just going to quickly talk about what, again, has been discussed a fair bit already, that this is not just the inclusion imperative. It's not just a feel-good thing. We're not doing this because it's a noble cause. There is actually a business case that can be made of all this, and the millennials and the Gen Z are the most diverse group that are in the community today. And they are looking, as job seekers, they are looking for how diverse a workplace is. And that is one of the top criteria when they're looking. It's not about just the salary package or the benefit package. And there's evidence out there, we heard already, that a higher percentage of women in corporate leadership positions, and that is directly related to a greater return on investments. Organizations with above average diversity, they have more employee engagement, and they outperform other organizations that lack these. So overall, increased performance, more innovative, improved employee retention. These are the reasons why we, as from a business perspective, we want to be doing this. And then let's not forget that the diverse population, the millennials and the Gen Z, they hold a giant share of the marketplace today. And we want to make sure that our products for them as consumers are geared towards them. And then again, if that representation is in our workplace, then we, again, are truly inclusive. So finally, coming to the resources you had asked me to share, if we can skip to the next slide. This is just, yeah, right here. We will share these. One of the things that came up, these are quick resources on unconscious bias. There is Harvard's implicit bias test that I encourage everyone to take in their own time, but we didn't do that today. One, in the essence of time. Two, I feel that the Trusted 10 exercise was a little bit more powerful and thought-provoking, a little bit more introspective, whereas this ends up being more of a hand-eye coordination skill, but still, nonetheless, it does make a case. So do take the time. There's a couple of strong videos here as well. And again, in your free time, if you do take, do watch them. There's a lot of, again, they're well done, and I'll leave it at that. Catalyst, it's an organization that, again, their main focus is gender diversity, but they do have a lot of material available on overall diversity and inclusion. So that's perhaps another organization we can look at. And then coming back to for inclusive workplace strategies, what are the resources available? We've heard from Wassam. There is the Workplace Inclusion Charter that we have. Other than that, there is a company, and depending, because I think this work isn't a one-size-fits-all model. So we have, there's Mosaic Cross-Cultural Solutions. It's a company that is owned by Dr. Anita Jack Davis, and that is very much a Kingston resource. Equitech, they have, if you sign up and you look, they will share your job postings with a wider audience, and how that works is it doesn't necessarily always talk about the resumes can be somewhat blinded, is that the right word that we would use, where we're not revealing names and identities and how they, they share that job posting. So many good resources out there. Another one is Best Textio, and when we were talking about language in our promotional material that we wish to use, it was actually very interesting the way their tool works, is that they will scan some of your material, whatever it is that you have, and eliminate certain words to make them more inclusive. Perhaps a word like imagine is more attractive to females, and powerful is more attractive to men. So they will look at it and find ways to make the language more inclusive. And so depending on the amount of or the effort that an organization is willing to put in, there are all these tools out there that are available for adopting different strategies in terms of recruitment, talent retention, and so on and so forth. I think that's it at my end.
Thanks, Anita. And so again, we'll share all of these. Wissam, I saw your hand, but we're just gonna, in essence of time, just do this poll and then any other question and answers before we go, and then we'll wrap up. So I'm gonna ask this poll that's gonna be put up again, just have to vote. And the question is, in the midst of COVID-19, what is your business priority? 1, productivity, improvement and digitization, reconnecting with customers, sourcing talent, embedding social responsibility and purpose, improving risk management and agility. So if you can take a moment and what is your business priority? Drum roll it and see what the results are here. Maybe we have a few people still thinking about it. Oh, that's interesting. So 19%, so the question was, in the midst of COVID-19, what is your business priority? 19% said productivity improvement and digitization. 31% said reconnecting with customers. 13% said sourcing talent. 25% said embedding social responsibility and purpose. And 13% improving risk management and agility. So neat, interesting to see that the biggest two would be engaging and reconnecting with people, which we know everyone's yearning for. And I'm glad to see that embedding social purpose and responsibility is also up there. So great. Wissam, you had a question, or she said she's happy to share more information about the charter. So we will also share that link when we share stuff to everyone. So that contact will be there so that you can reach out to Wissam. Other than that, are there any other questions before we leave? I want to thank everyone for coming and to being present and showing up and staying, and to all our presenters, to Jamie and her team, to our sign language interpreters. But if there are any questions before we go, would anybody like to ask or say anything? Oh, Bridget?
Not a question, but I did just want to share that Keys has coming up some free inclusive recruitment through intercultural intelligence training sessions for employers. And there's 2 dates coming up in March that you could choose from if you wanted to participate, either March 9th at 1 p.m. or March 25th at 10 a.m. And we'll be sharing that flyer as well after the event.
Okay, perfect. So we'll have all that information. Anybody else has any questions? I'm seeing lots of thank yous. You're welcome. Anybody else has any questions before we go? I don't see any hands. Don't see any questions. Well, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate you. We appreciate, even the fact that you're here looking and trying to have this discussion, I think is step one, and is a great testament. And so I hope that we continue doing Jamie's things, showing up, asking why, sharing, and I think we're on a good road. So thanks everybody for being here, and have a great rest of your day.